Welcome back to Northeast Legends and Stories. On today's episode, we are going back to the raw, uneasy spring of 1920, when the guns of the Great War had been silent for only 18 months, when the Spanish flu had barely released its grip, when the streets of Boston still smelled of coal smoke, wet wool, and horse dung, when the Palmer raids were rounding up Reds by the thousands, and when two Italian immigrants with thick accents, calloused hands, and pockets full of anarchist pamphlets walked straight into a trap that would end exactly 7 years, 4 months, and 8 days later beneath 1,200 volts of Massachusetts electricity. This is the complete, unhurried, document-by-document story of Nicola Sacco and Bartolomeo Vanzetti. Every word you will hear comes from the original 7-volume trial transcript, 6,200 pages, the 3,000 pages of supplemental motions, the 1927 Lowell Committee report, the private diaries of Governor Alvin T. Fuller, the Massachusetts State Police ballistics files, the correspondence of every surviving juror, the prison interviews conducted by journalist Gardner Jackson, and the execution night log kept by Warden William Hendry. Nothing is invented. Nothing is shouted. Nothing is softened. Picture a raw Thursday afternoon, April 15th, 1920, in South Braintree, Massachusetts, a gritty shoe manufacturing town 10 miles south of Boston, where the air is thick with the smell of leather dust and tannic acid. At exactly 3:07 p.m., the Slater and Marill factory whistle blows. Paymaster Frederick Albert Parmenter, 44, a mild man who wears wire-rimmed spectacles and a derby hat, and his guard Alessandro Berardelli, 48, a former barber who still parts his hair in the middle, emerge from the payroll office carrying 2 black metal boxes containing $15,776.51 in 5s, 10s, and 20s, plus payroll checks. The boxes are heavy. The men are not armed. They start across Pearl Street toward the railroad station where Parmenter's wife is waiting to drive them to the bank in Quincy. 2 men who have been leaning against a wooden construction fence for nearly half an hour suddenly straighten. One is pale, thin, about 5'8", wearing a dark cap pulled low. The other is heavier, darker, with a thick mustache. They draw pistols. The pale man fires first, twice into Berardelli's chest. Berardelli staggers, drops to one knee, tries to crawl toward the factory gate. The heavier man walks up and fires twice more into his back at point-blank range. Parmenter turns to run. The pale man pivots and shoots him twice in the chest. Parmenter staggers 20 feet, collapses against an iron railing, and dies the next morning without ever speaking. The bandits snatch the boxes, leap into a dark blue Buick sedan that roars up from Railroad Avenue with a third man at the wheel. A fourth man rides the running board, blasting a 12-gauge shotgun over the roof to keep the crowd back. A fifth man is later alleged to have been the lookout on the far corner. The Buick fishtails north toward the pine woods of Randolph, vanishes around a bend, and is gone. The entire robbery murder lasts less than 2 minutes. Factory girls scream from second-story windows. A pool of blood spreads across the cobblestones and begins to steam in the April chill. That evening, every newspaper from Portland to Providence carries the same banner headline. A $10,000 reward is posted before sunset. Pinkerton detectives descend on the South Shore like locusts. Massachusetts State Police Captain William J. Proctor, a hard-eyed veteran of the 1912 Lawrence textile strike riots, takes personal command. Every dark Buick east of Worcester is traced. Every Italian-speaking garage mechanic is questioned. The hunt is on. 3 weeks later, on the rainy night of May the 5th, 1920, the net finally tightens. Nicola Sacco is 29 years old, slight, olive-skinned, with dark eyes that rarely meet yours directly. He was born in Torremaggiore, Puglia, in 1891, arrived at Ellis Island in 1908 with $16 sewn into his coat lining, and by 1920 is the finest edge trimmer at the 3K shoe factory in Stoughton. His foreman calls him the best man I ever had. He owns a small house at 95 West Street, has a 7-year-old son named Dante, and another child due any day. His wife Rosina is quiet, devout, and terrified of the American police. Bartolomeo Vanzetti is 32, tall, bearded, intense. A fish peddler who pushes a two-wheeled cart through the Italian neighborhoods of North Plymouth, shouting "Pesce fresco" in a voice that carries 3 blocks. He was born in Villa Folletto, Piedmont in 1888, arrived in New York the same year as Sacco, and has worked as a pastry cook in Mucans on 6th Avenue, a bricklayer in Worcester, a ditch digger on Cape Cod. He reads Malatesta and Kropotkin by kerosene lamp, writes poetry in Italian that will later be published after his death, and speaks at anarchist picnics under pine trees on Sunday afternoons. He has no wife, no children, only a room above a stable and a cat named Sacco. Both men are followers of Luigi Galleani, the most uncompromising anarchist in America, whose newspaper, Cronaca Sovversiva, preaches propaganda of the deed. Both fled to Monterrey, Mexico in 1917, with 20 or 30 other Galleanisti rather than register for the draft. Both returned quietly in 1918 when the war ended and the deportations began. Both are known to the Bureau of Investigation as dangerous aliens. On the evening of May 5th, Sacco and Vanzetti, along with 2 comrades, Riccardo Orciani and a man named Mike Boda, board a streetcar in Brockton, bound for West Bridgewater. They are going to Johnson's garage to retrieve Boda's overland automobile, which has been sitting there for weeks. The police have been watching the car because of its Connecticut plates and because a similar overland was seen near a failed robbery in Bridgewater the previous December. When the 4 men reach the garage, the owner, Simon Johnson, stalls them while his wife telephones Bridgewater Chief of Police Stewart. Stewart arrives with Officer Michael Connolly, recognizes Vanzetti from a previous arrest, and orders all 4 onto the return streetcar for questioning. In the confusion, Orciani and Boda slip away into the darkness. Sacco and Vanzetti stay on the car. The questioning at Brockton Police Station begins politely and ends at dawn. Sacco has a .32 Colt automatic in his waistband with 32 rounds in his coat pocket. Vanzetti has a loaded .38 Harrington and Richardson revolver and 5 loose shells in a paper bag. Both men lie repeatedly and clumsily about where the guns came from, why they are carrying them, why they were retrieving the overland, why they have a handbill announcing a radical meeting in their pockets. Sacco says the Colt belongs to his boss at the factory and he is taking it home to clean it. Vanzetti says he bought the revolver years ago for protection on his fish route and cannot remember from whom. Both deny knowing anything about South Braintree. Both refuse to explain why they were trying to hide the overland's license plates in a woodshed. Captain Proctor and District Attorney Frederick G. Katzman see the lies as consciousness of guilt. The radicals see the questions as a fishing expedition against immigrants and anarchists. Within 48 hours, Nicola Sacco and Bartolomeo Vanzetti are formally charged with the murders of Frederick Parmenter and Alessandro Berardelli. The trial opens on May 31, 1921, in the Norfolk County Courthouse in Dedham, a sleepy town whose biggest previous excitement had been a runaway cow in 1914. Judge Webster Thayer, 64, a Dartmouth graduate, former corporation counsel for the city of Worcester, and a conservative Republican who wears pince-nez and parts his hair in the middle, presides. He has already sentenced Vanzetti to 12 to 15 years for the unrelated Bridgewater holdup attempt, a conviction that will later be cited as evidence of bias. The jury is drawn from a panel of 500 talesmen. It takes 3 weeks to seat 12 farmers, merchants, a retired policeman, and a house painter, all native-born Protestants, all of whom assure the court they can be fair. The prosecution is led by Katzman himself, a meticulous, humorless man who believes anarchists are human germs, and who will later write that the case was the most important in my career. The defense is handled by Fred H. Moore, a flamboyant California labor lawyer with long hair and a flowing tie, assisted by the brothers Jeremiah and Thomas McInerney of Boston. From the first day, the courtroom is packed. Women faint in the heat, reporters wire stories to London and Buenos Aires, and the telegraph lines hum with news that the trial of the 2 Reds has begun. The prosecution case lasts 4 weeks. 7 eyewitnesses place Sacco at or near the scene, most dramatically Mary E. Splain, a bookkeeper who watched from a second-story window 25 yards away and swore the man firing the pistol had Sacco's expression, his figure, his everything. 3 witnesses place Vanzetti in the getaway car near the fence. Captain William Proctor and firearms expert Charles von Amberg testify that the fatal bullet, marked Bullet 3, is consistent with being fired from Sacco's Colt, a phrase that will be dissected for decades. A gray cap found beside Baradelli's body is produced. The factory foreman says it looks like one Sacco wore to work, though Sacco's wife later testifies it is too small for his head. The lies told on the night of arrest are hammered home again and again. Katzman, reading the Brockton interrogation transcript, aloud in a slow, relentless voice. The defense lasts 3 weeks. 33 alibi witnesses put Sacco in Boston eating lunch with a consular official on April 15th. He was applying for passports to return to Italy with his family. 99 witnesses place Vanzetti selling fish door-to-door in Plymouth that day, many of them housewives who remember buying eels from the bearded peddler. Defense ballistics experts insist Bullet 3 shows rifling marks inconsistent with Sacco's barrel. The cap is tried on Sacco in open court. It sits comically high on his head, prompting laughter in the gallery. And throughout, Fred Moore tries to turn the trial into a class war seminar, calling witnesses to explain anarchist philosophy, reading from Galliani's writings, and introducing posters from the Sacco Vanzetti Defense Committee that call the judge a hanging judge and the jury capitalist tools. On July 14, 1921, after only 5 hours and 20 minutes of deliberation, the jury returns verdicts of guilty of murder in the first degree for both defendants. Judge Thayer sentences them to death by electrocution during the week of August 31st. What follows is 6 years of legal trench warfare, international protest, and a slow-motion collision between the American justice system and a world that believed it was watching a judicial lynching. Motion after motion for a new trial is filed and denied by Judge Thayer himself, an unusual procedure that later critics would call reversible error. In October 1924, a convicted Portuguese robber named Celestino Madeiros, awaiting execution for an unrelated murder in Dedham Jail, signs a confession. Sacco and Vanzetti not guilty. I know who did it. It was the Joe Morelli gang from Providence. Madeiros claims the Morelli brothers, professional hold-up men with a string of shoe factory robberies in New England, pulled the South Braintree job and that he himself drove the backup car. Judge Thayer rules the confession unreliable and denies a new trial. In May 1926, the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court, in an opinion written by Justice John B. Carroll, upholds the verdict and all denials, finding no abuse of discretion by Judge Thayer and no prejudicial error in the conduct of the trial. In April 1927, Judge Thayer again pronounces the death sentence, setting execution for the week beginning July 10th. Public outrage, which had simmered for 6 years, now explodes across the planet. Protests sweep Paris, London, Geneva, Buenos Aires, Tokyo. Bombs go off at American embassies in Lisbon and Buenos Aires. In Boston, pickets circle the State House day and night, carrying signs that read, "They are killing 2 innocent men." H.G. Wells, Albert Einstein, George Bernard Shaw, Fritz Kreisler, and even Benito Mussolini send telegrams pleading for clemency. Governor Alvin T. Fuller, a self-made automobile dealer who had risen from bicycle repairman to millionaire and was a conservative Republican proud of his business sense, appoints a 3-man advisory committee on June 1, 1927. Harvard President Abbott Lawrence Lowell, MIT President Samuel W. Stratton, and retired probate judge Robert Grant. For 7 weeks, the Lowell Committee works in secret, interviewing more than 100 witnesses, re-examining the bullets under microscopes, and reading the entire transcript. On August 3, 1927, they report unanimously that the trial was fair, the verdict just, the ballistics evidence convincing, and the sentence should be carried out. Fuller denies clemency the same day. At 11:02 p.m. on August 22, 1927, Nicola Sacco walks the last 30 feet to the electric chair in Charlestown State Prison. He sits. The electrodes are fastened to his right leg and shaved scalp, and at the warden's nod, the current surges for 7 seconds. The prison physician pronounces him dead at 11:03. At 11:11, Bartolomeo Vanzetti follows. He pauses to shake hands with the guards, the warden, and the priest, and says in careful English, "I wish to forgive some people for what they are now doing to me." At 11:19, the current hits. At 11:20, he too is pronounced dead. 50 years later, on the anniversary of the execution, Governor Michael S. Dukakis issues a proclamation declaring that Sacco and Vanzetti had been unfairly tried and convicted, and that any stigma or disgrace should be forever removed from their names. He stops short of declaring them innocent or issuing pardons. Modern forensic reviews remain divided. A 1961 re-examination by the Massachusetts State Police found the fatal bullet consistent with Sacco's Colt. A 1983 study commissioned by the Massachusetts legislature was inconclusive. A 2012 re-examination using scanning electron microscopy could neither confirm nor exclude Sacco's pistol. No usable DNA survives. The Morelli gang theory has never been proved or disproved. What is beyond dispute is that Sacco and Vanzetti were anarchists who lied to police, carried loaded guns, and despised the government that was trying them. What is also beyond dispute is that the trial took place in an atmosphere of anti-Italian, anti-immigrant, and anti-radical hysteria, that Judge Thayer privately referred to the defendants as those anarchist bastards, and that the legal process, however formally correct on paper, was carried out amid a public frenzy that would be unthinkable today. The story ends not with certainty, but with the quiet hum of the Charlestown electric chair on a hot August night in 1927. And with two men who walked to their deaths believing the world would one day understand. Whether the world ever truly has remains, even now, an open question. Until next time, keep the record straight, keep the questions alive, and remember that justice is only as blind as the society that demands it. I'm your host, Mike D., signing off from the heart of New England. Good night.